What's going on, farmers? Build season is upon us, and I hope everybody's doing well, getting in their garage, working towards their goals, and kicking butt. I've noticed over the last couple months we had a lot of new subscribers coming on, and to all the subscribers I give a huge amount of appreciation. Thank you guys, I appreciate it. It helps motivate me to continue making videos. I know I've been slacking on that, and you know, it's one of those things, you got a full-time job and do this stuff on the side, and without the full-time job you can't do this, and so just, you know, it's all about priorities, and I do as much as I can. But again, I sincerely appreciate it, and I give a great thanks to you guys. It motivates me, and I appreciate all the messages that come through with people telling me that, you know, showing them that you can do this in your garage is helping them to inspire and motivate them into doing what they want to do. So thank you, very much appreciate it. So to get back into the grind of things, where I left off last was the lower torque box, the Team Z lower torque box installation process, and we're going to talk about that and some of the struggles, some of the good parts, and go from there. So sit down, take a break, and hang out. Alright, so to jump right into it, last video was about the torque box and preparing your torque box area, and I was showing how I thought to install these and all that, and I had mentioned that I needed to, before I actually install them, I needed to seal off the mini tub area where the floor pan is in the rear. As you can see, I've done that on both sides, and it's just as easy as taking some 16 gauge, drilling some holes through it, obviously making sure that they fall the right spot on the floor pan so that everything gets mated together, and then just start welding it up. So you know, I've got, on the driver's side, I've got some seam sealer on some of it, because once the torque box installed, it's difficult to get to, so I've done that. I gotta do the passenger side yet, but that's step one pretty much. So we'll get into the car and kind of show you that. So you can see I've also got my rocker box plating on, and it bends around nice, closes all this stuff off because it was open before from cutting it into install the mini tubs. I've also removed the piece of steel that is spot welded to the subframe, and the replacement torque box fits real nice and snug up in here. Now I've been struggling with this driver's side, and as it sits now, you can see that let's see, you can see that on the rocker box it fits snug, and it fits up, the lip of it fits. Man, it's difficult to get some lighting in here, but you can see that this lip on the rocker box pad fits against the floor nice, and everything seems well. But then if you look back here, you can see that this bulkhead pad is actually low from where it's supposed to be. And that it's even more difficult to see, but for the lower control arm mounting point, this plane here should actually be parallel with the lip on your subframe, because that's supposed to be parallel to the floor as well. And this right now is not currently in the position that it should be installed. So if you put it up to where this bulkhead pad is as high as it should be, you can see that there's a large gap that opens up on the back side of this rocker pad, but the front side of it, it's touching the floor. And then it also puts a huge gap between the subframe lip and the lower control arm mounting area. I had reached out to Team Z about this, showing them that if I install it like this, you know, it's not in the right position here, and if I put the lower control arm mount like this, and so that the rocker pad lip is against the floor, this bulkhead pad actually sits lower than the floor. I had trimmed a little piece of this off, that's why it's not sticking below, but it just doesn't fit right. And I ended up kind of getting sick of working on this side and decided to go over to passenger side, and this one slipped right in, fits just like it should. You can see that the bulkhead pad is up as high as it's supposed to. It's not sticking below the floor at all. The lower control arm mount is parallel with the subframe lip, and the rocker pad lip is parallel to the floor pan. The only issue with this side is there is some gappage against the rocker, but it's a minimal issue, can be fixed. So when I reached out to Team Z about the fitment of this driver's side, I was told that, and from their perspective I can understand, you know, you see a lot of weld and all this. They said that this was reworked and that's why it didn't fit well, and it makes sense because it does look strange and odd. And one other thing is, if you look from this angle, you can see that this bulkhead kind of goes towards the front. It kind of has this dip in it right around where the subframe mounts, and that's just a product that's not from me doing any welding or moving anything. That's just a product of either the way the car was assembled or the way it settled out over the years. And if you look on the passenger side, from the same angle, you can see how much straighter this side is. I apologize about this camera work. It's kind of tough when you're under the car and lighting's poor, but you can see how straight that is. So that makes installation a lot easier as well. So even though there's differences between driver's side and passenger side bulkhead, it still didn't explain why the driver's side, when the bulkhead pad was put in the proper spot, would drop everything down, except that that rocker lip is not oriented correctly with the rest of it. So I ended up noticing, as I was comparing the two sides, the two units for each side, and I noticed what I'll show in pictures now. So as you can see in the first picture, It's the passenger side unit, and we're looking at the red line on the lower control arm box on that top plane of it, which would be towards the floor. And then behind that you can see the rocker pad and the line associated with that. You can see that those two lines are parallel. Next picture is a driver's side, and looking at the same view, you can see that there's a red line associated with the top plane of the lower control arm box, and then behind it, the rocker pad, the top plane of that is not parallel to that, and that's why that rocker, that's why when positioned correctly, the driver's side actually drops the lower control arm mount down, because that rocker pad is not oriented correctly with the rest of the unit. So I've reached out to Team Z, still waiting to hear back from them. I showed them the pictures. I requested a new driver's side unit. So as far as installation goes of these things, from what I can tell, is once you have the torque box area, all the OE stuff removed, everything prepped, then they give you this stencil piece here, and we'll go down there and I'll show you. So now that we have the torque box in place and we know that it fits good, we can pull it out. So if you're able to fit the new torque box in place with that piece of metal that's spot welded right here with a single hole for your lower control arm mount, you can use this hole with a bolt through it and set it in place, mark your oblong hole, and that's where you cut out to open up so you have room for all your adjustment holes. Now, because I had to take that, I don't know what you call that, reinforcement piece, that side piece with the hole in it, off just to get mine to fit, what I did was just get my box in place. I went up here and marked some holes with my Sharpie, and obviously the top two are the only ones that are going to hit anything. The bottom two go right through the original hole. Then I pulled it out, and I took my stencil and I just kind of centered those marks in the oblong hole, traced it out, and then ended up cutting that out. So then once you do that, you also need to open up the other side. So they give you these reinforcement rings to reinforce this once you open it up. Now you can see I have another piece of steel here, and the OEM holes are not aligned. The inside hole is further forward, and this hole is further back, and the other hole is further forward. So I wanted them more aligned. So I ended up moving this over and cutting a bigger hole, and the original hole actually goes out to about right here, and so I just grabbed this piece. It's a 1 inch wide, same height, same thickness, and just use that as a cover and to help further reinforce. But it's not necessary. It's all more personal preference when that comes into play. So once you have all your holes opened up, you need to reinsert your torque box, put your bolts through, grab a socket and an extension, and make sure everything functions right. You don't want to have your socket not fit or something like that. So make sure all that stuff fits right. And once you have both sides done and up to this point, basically you're almost ready to start welding them in. The one thing I would do is verify measurements that not the driver's side or passenger side, that they're not one's further forward or further back than the other. And what you can do is on the subframes, front and back, there's holes in the bottom that the factory uses to position on their jigs. So you can measure off those holes. You can measure, diagonal, side to side, make sure everything's set right and they're in the same plane. You could probably also drop some strings off of your upper torque box and measure. You just want to make sure that the lower torque boxes are in the same plane, because if they're not, your arc length of each side will be different. It may not seem like a big deal, and it may not, depending on your car's setup. But let's say you're a radial car. If you had a setup similar to like X275 or Radial versus the World, those classes are probably beyond most of what we're doing, but let's use that as an example. They actually want separation between the rear end and the body. Well, that means your suspension, your rear suspension is coming down like that, right? Now, if each side is the same arc length, it's not a big deal. But if one side is shorter than the other, that rear end will actually take, and as it comes down, it'll twist. What that'll do is induce steer, and that's the last thing you want when you're, above 100 miles an hour. You don't want to unexpectedly have a steer situation. So for me, I'm going to try and get everything within 1/8 of an inch. You got to determine what tolerances you want for your own build. I'm not put the lawyer talk in here. I'm not responsible. Blah blah blah. But that's what I'm doing. And once you have everything measured up and everything's where it needs to be, then it's time to burn them in. So that's where I'm at. I've also, I'm sure you guys have noticed this beautiful rear end sitting here. This is a Marillette Racing M8 Moser M88 center with 3-inch tubes, fully braced. I have my adjustable lower control arm brackets. You can see I got all the holes I could ever need. I have coilover mount brackets, even tow hook brackets, but 9-inch ends on both sides. This piece here is a serious rear end. It looks like something you would see on a RVW or X275 car, but technically this is the little boy stuff that Marty at Marillette Racing does. This is, the small side. He does the majority of what he does is fab 9-inch and floaters and all that stuff. Some of his rear ends were on some of the cars at some of the winners at import versus domestic. You'll see his rear ends and a lot of stuff, and it's kind of surprising or it's surprising to me, maybe a lot of people know about them, but I happened to just find them on a off chance, looking through some stuff and different vendors and whatnot, and but this stuff is top notch. Being that these are out there, I don't know if a lot of people know about the Moser M88, but compared to an OE, this thing is above and beyond. I don't know why anybody would even bother building up a factory OE rear end, unless it's already got good guts and they're not going to narrow it or something like that. Okay, you know, maybe if you're just doing a 10-second deal, but if you're wanting to get after it, this here is the way to go, in my opinion, because it's marginal how much more this costs compared to getting OE unit beefed up. Sometimes the companies that do build them won't even take that housing because, you know, it might be in such crappy condition they don't even want to work on it. So this is all new. You know, factory center isn't even designed for 3-inch tubes. This one is. The Moser put in extra reinforcement in areas on this thing. So it's a beefier unit. It's better cast material. So there's even what, I mean, I've seen even welded up OE stuff, spin tubes or bend tubes. It's just, I don't want to deal with any issues with that, so I went this route. But again, every build's different, so you gotta look at your own circumstances, your own desires and expectations, and see what works for you. So what's next? So once I get these lower torque box units in, from there, in the next few weeks here, I'm going to be getting some guts. I'm going to get me some strange on this rear end. I'm going to fill it with strange stuff. So I'm getting prices for that. And once I get the torque boxes in, I can actually get the rear end in there, start figuring out where I'm going to put my coilover mount bar, getting all that stuff worked out, and a roll bar, figuring all that stuff, how I'm going to set that up. And so, yeah, I'm just kind of held up by these lower torque box units. But once I get that sorted out, I should have some more stuff coming. And gosh, I can't think of anything else really. I still need to, if you maybe noticed earlier, I still need to finish the passenger side floorboards. I got to put that all back together, so I'm going to work on that while I'm in limbo as far as these torque boxes go. So it's not all, what's the word for not, it's I'll get stuff done. So keep an eye out, should be some more stuff coming soon. Once again, thank you to all the subscribers out there. I really appreciate it. It definitely puts more pressure on me knowing that there's people interested in seeing how to do this and everything, but it's good pressure. It's not anything bad, although I feel when I'm not putting videos out, I feel like I'm letting you guys down. So with all that, I'm going to get out of here and get some work done. So guys, get in that garage, turn that dream into a goal and crush it. See ya.